All right. Well, if we can get everyone to please be seated. Might have to use the gavel. If everyone could just please be seated, we're about to start. Just get everyone's attention. All right. We're going to call to order the regular council meeting here on Monday, August 15th, 2022, 7 p.m. As always, obviously in person, but also on Zoom, as well as through our Facebook feed, and as well our good friends from CHGO Television are here. First and foremost, I want to do a recording of attendance. I note that all members of council are here for this meeting as well, with exception of Councillor Gumashel. And to start, I wanted to recognize that we are on the unceded traditional territory of the Beskotu Mugati people. I'll be looking for a mover to approve the agenda as circulated. We've got Councillor Hurdle, a seconder. Councillor Blanchard. Any discussion on anything regarding the agenda this evening? Seeing none, so I will call the question. All in favor of approving the agenda, please signify by saying aye. Aye. That is everybody. This agenda has been approved, and now we're going to get in the disclosure of conflict of interest. Is there any member of council that would like to disclose one this evening? If anything should arise throughout the meeting, please just let me know and we'll recuse yourself at that time. So we're now getting into presentations. So I am going to switch. I'm going to go up to the podium just so I can recognize. We're going to do the Community Volunteer Award. So if you just give me 1 second to come forward, I'll ask Deputy Mayor Akaji to come forward with me to help me with the certificates. All right. Can everyone hear me? Perfect. First of all, I wanted to thank everyone for being here. It speaks volumes to the people that are being recognized this evening. But in my 6 years on council, I've never seen so many youth in the council chamber. And I think that speaks volumes to one of our nominees as well, if not more than one. We all know that St. Andrews is certainly a special place to live. Got some amazing scenery being along the ocean. Obviously, as we heard from our previous meeting, we've got some rich heritage. It's a vibrant downtown. We have neat shops. We have world-class restaurants, some of the top attractions in Canada. And then, of course, a bay for things like whale watching, unique places to stay, championship golf course. I could talk all day about some of the things that we offer. But there is one thing that you actually can't go on TripAdvisor and see. And it's very, very important to our community. And it's our people. Our people truly make the difference, and our volunteers are the best example that we have of that. And as New Brunswickers, some of us have a reputation of being modest, not necessarily liking to get into the spotlight and be recognized, but I think it's very important for this community to recognize the individuals that we are about to this evening. So at this time, what I'm going to do is go through some service awards for some of the top volunteers that we have in our community. The first person we'd like to recognize this evening is a longtime resident of St. Andrews and was one of the first graduates of Sir James Dunn Academy, and I don't want to date him. He has a passion and love for sailing, and the knowledge of our harbor helps him steer the St. Andrews Yacht Club to a vibrant group that it is today. As a director and a past president of the Kiwanis Club of St. Andrews, he has worked tirelessly to ensure the club has funds available to grant the community every year through his volunteer work with the Oceanfront Campground. And even in the past, he's been known to wear a Santa suit during Christmas to warm the hearts of our youth. He has a strong passion for curling, and his energy helps the Heather Curling Club, and it's going into its 100th year this year. I will note that I did date you earlier, but you were not there from the opening. He showcases the spirit of the club, and he helps spark interest in curling. He is an active member of the Passamaquoddy Lodge Board and the fundraising team, and has helped to steer the lodge to better serve the community. He has brought tremendous experience to all of these groups, whether for project management, interpersonal skills, or just caring for the citizens of St. Andrews. He cares about those he works with and is a definite advantage to any organization and certainly our community. I'll call Roger McNabb to come forward to be recognized. The next recipient is also a longtime resident of St. Andrews. I don't think she was part of one of our first graduating classes, but her and her husband are business owners in the town. They've supported many of the community efforts, including the Charlotte County Hospice, Charlotte County Cancer Society, Sunbury Shores, the SPCA, St. Andrews Paddling Club, and Paddle Fest, to name a few. She has volunteered her time and expertise to several organizations over 15 years and has been a devoted patient volunteer, especially with a hospice. Involved in the business community as a member of the Chamber of Commerce, CCRTA, and the BIA, which she keeps trying to step down from the role, but we've managed to keep her as president for 10 years. She's helped to lead the downtown business community through 2 municipal administrations. At this time, I'll ask Dale Chambers to come forward to be recognized. I was telling her that means she has to stay for an 11th year as president. The next recipient is a retired social worker who has been serving the Passamaquoddy Lodge since 2005. They have provided countless invaluable hours conducting pet therapy to so many residents over the years. Residents appreciate having pet therapy, as many had to leave their pets behind, and this therapy creates an emotional, sensory, and physical connection for all residents. She is dedicated, loving, compassionate, and humble, and gives all of her credit to her past and present Boston Terriers, Brownie and Lulu. She brings companionship and a little bit of home to her residents. She gives the opportunity to residents to take care of animals, and instead of being the ones that are necessarily cared for or replacing people that they've cared for throughout their life. She has worked with lots of other organizations across Charlotte County and before in Ontario. She's dedicated herself to make other people's lives in our community better. I'll ask Charlene McPhee to come forward to be recognized, and as well for Brownie and Lulu. This next individual has been the director of the Charlotte United Soccer Club for many years now and has been the coach for the Sir James Dunn Academy boys soccer team. He is a dedicated advocate for kids soccer in St. Andrews, organizing, coaching, and cheering kids with such a commitment. He's an excellent coach and seems to have a way with all ages of kids and toddlers and teenagers. If you've ever been to the soccer field, you literally can see him running every group by himself at the same time. I do good to manage 3 kids. He does everything he can to make sure soccer is fair and fun for all involved, including players, their families, coaches, and volunteer. He spends his winters dedicated to planning and preparing to make soccer exciting for the spring and summer seasons. In both high school and Charlotte United, he brings the best out in every player, from the person who has never ever played to someone who plays competitively. Everyone feels like they belong and they're valued. Most importantly, he does not show up on our best days, but he is there for us when they're tired, frustrated, or just having a bad day. He is always there to support them and has helped youth in our community grow. He's an all-around amazing coach, a wonderful person, full of energy. I personally can say I don't know how he knows how he keeps every kid's name straight. It's amazing. He knows probably 300 kids' names in Charlotte County. It's amazing. So at this point, well-deserved, and I see there's a lot of youth that actually play soccer. I've seen them actually on the pitch. At this point, Mark, if you'd like to come forward, Mark Peters, to be recognized. We're on to Teamwork Awards. The next one would be a member that is of the Charlotte County Archive Board for the last 6 years. Tireless efforts and her physical, cultural, and intellectual contributions are outstanding. Persistent worker behind the scenes and in public, has played a key role in bringing on volunteers and helping provide tours to the courthouse, the jail, and making sure that it's open from spring to fall. Before the pandemic, she could be found helping the visiting children by dressing in historic clothing she made herself and helping children dive into the rich history of our community. During the pandemic, she took it upon herself to lead an effort to clean out all undocumented items. This was a huge task and a challenge that she took and was able to succeed. She then leads the process to digitalize all the information and transcribing hard to read documents. One of these documents, it was a diary of a farmer from Rolling Dam from 1877, became a narrative of a short video produced for educational and general interest. It's safe to say Shirley Brinkhurst does a lot for Charlotte County Archives, and we'd like to have her come forward. And at this time, we're also going to recognize another long-standing member of the Charlotte County Archives Board. They are on their media communications and public profile team for over 4 years and has been instrumental in all publications and initiatives during that time. She has brought her professional experience and applied her wisdom to issues at hand. She is the hardest editor, guaranteeing our products pass the review, ensuring coherent phrasing and crossing of all T's and dotting all I's. I personally could use you when it comes to council letters. She has been key in fundraising and marketing of initiatives, and she's been very supportive of the fabulous Charlotte County Moments videos that we've all watched. She is more than a fundraiser and hard worker. She is the cherry and upbeat contributor to all projects in the community. She helps to ensure smooth running of the operation and volunteer ventures. She has played a fundamental role in all the recent efforts of the archives. Her extensive, talented, and unselfish support for our community makes her one of the key members and contributors. At this time, I'll ask Sheila Blagro to come forward to be recognized. We do have a couple of other award recipients that were not able to be here this evening, so we are going to do those at a later time, but we do have one more to present at this time. This time it's going to be a Special Appreciation Award. So this individual began planning for the Bayside Golf Course years ago and turned a large hayfield into a 9-hole community golf course. Most work was completed by the individual themselves with helpful friends and volunteers, and I see some of them here today. The course took several years to complete. Since opening over 5 years ago, this course has provided a huge service to hundreds, if not thousands of golfers, old and young, who frequent from April to October. I've seen them before and after that, though. I've seen a lot of them actually out there past that. We'll have to rewrite that. Children who would not normally have an opportunity to experience the joys of walking in nature and playing golf are given the opportunity, often with their grandparents and parents. The key thing is this is a very affordable golf course that provides enjoyment for all economic backgrounds, access to nature, exercise, and there's nothing better than the energy that comes from chasing golf balls for a couple hours on a golf course. He has created a way for the community to be served, to nurture family connections, build confidence, provide physical exercise, and foster community connections. His vision and determination have led to a whole new meaning for a number of people to the word golf club. And I can tell you, he's still quite an athlete. In fact, we have a memorial tournament that's going on this week in memory of John Flamer at the Rosemount Private Golf Course. And this individual has the top score still. So I still haven't golfed yet, but it's pretty impressive to see the way that he's still able to do that. And if anyone's curled with him, they know the same story. It's amazing how accurate he is. So it's a real honor for us to welcome up Mr. Phil Bartlett to be recognized. He's giving his partner Brian Cummings credit for the golf score, but I've seen both Brian and Phil play, and I know it probably came from your club, Phil. So as I mentioned, we have a few other awards that we'll do at another council meeting in the future, but I just wanted to thank the members of the public for being here to recognize. We do have a full council meeting ahead if you'd like to stick around. But if you do want to go at this time, we'll give a few moments for you to get an opportunity to step out. And again, thank you so much for being here this evening. Other than all I could see on that camera is my bald head. Do you see it? It looked like. Can you ask Patrick if that? Can you ask your director if that's okay? This presentation is first, so let me know. That way. How are you? Yep, I believe so. All right, council, we're going to go a 30-second warning and then we'll get going. 30 seconds. All right, we're going to call the meeting back to order. Just going to call the meeting back to order at this particular time. We're going to continue with our second presentation for this evening. The second presentation will be made by Karl Deering. It's a presentation regarding the outdoor fitness center location at Point Park. So at this particular time, Mr. Deering, the podium is yours.
Thank you. Mayor Henderson, members of Town Council, employees of the town of St. Andrews, and anyone else that's here. We thank you for allowing us time to speak with you today. We appreciate this opportunity. My wife, Patricia, and I live at 400 Prince of Wales Street, which is directly beside the proposed location of the outdoor exercise park. We have lived at this location for 34 years, and over the years, we have seen this green space at Indian Point become increasingly popular, providing many benefits to numerous individuals daily. Therefore, we are here today because we feel that to begin erosion of such a beautiful, large green space in our town is unwarranted, lacks vision, and in our opinion, should not happen. So what is a green space? A green space is defined as an area of grass, trees, or other vegetation set apart for recreational or aesthetic purposes in an otherwise urban environment. Currently, we are fortunate to have exactly that at Indian Point. The most important qualities of a public green space have been identified as quietness, spaciousness, and cleanliness. Green spaces are associated with a number of health benefits, which include longer life expectancy, fewer mental health problems, less cardiovascular disease, better cognitive functioning for children and the elderly, and healthier babies. Also, green spaces are associated with environmental benefits as they regulate extreme temperatures, freshens air, reduces runoff, and improves water quality. Furthermore, green spaces are associated with economic benefits. Studies have shown that green spaces in a community provide socio-economic benefits, including an increase in local shopping and dining, which ultimately increases investment in the local economy, increases community engagement, and instills greater pride in the community. As noted, a multitude of benefits have been associated with green spaces. In numerous towns and cities across North America, residential areas near green spaces are highly coveted and sought after, as are the green spaces themselves. As green spaces are so beneficial to all, we have several concerns regarding any future development of this treasured area. One concern we have is that this particular green space appears to fall under the classification of wetlands. While it is possible to obtain permits to develop wetlands, we should remember that wetlands serve a very important role. Wetlands help protect us from flooding, drought, and climate change. They protect wildlife by providing hundreds of species with safe places to eat, sleep, and raise their young. They also clean the water we enjoy at the beaches, lakes, and rivers. To develop an area with a wetland designation unnecessarily, especially one bordered by an environmentally sensitive zone, which this one is, seems somewhat irresponsible. Now, this property is designated as a provincially significant wetland, where permits to develop are typically very, very difficult to obtain. So if we look at the map, in yellow is the wetland, and there's a 30-meter buffer all around that wetland that is generally untouchable. Another concern we have is that this area is a decommissioned dump. The Indian Point Green Space was the town's public dump until 1973 when it was decommissioned. The dump was located at this area for years, and I remember as a young boy throwing the garbage into the trunk of the family car and heading down to the point to get rid of the garbage. And you'd throw the garbage into the burning area, and there was a fellow there with a long pole, and he would shuffle it around and keep the fires burning. Now, we're not sure whether or not this dump was properly capped, environmentally looked after, but one would only hope that at the very least, a true environmental impact study would be required before a decommissioned dump site was developed in any way, shape, or form. Another concern we have is the flood zone predictions. The town's website contains a map showing the projected sea level rise over the upcoming years and how this rise could affect the town of St. Andrews. While examining this map, we noticed that a portion of the green space at Indian Point is projected to be underwater in the near future. And if this is true, it would seem that Indian Point would be a poor place to invest in any development. And there's the map there. It's on our website, and it shows clearly in red the areas that are projected to be underwater. Another concern we have is the Passamaquoddy people themselves. The green space we're talking about has been called Indian Point for as long as I've lived here, and that's about 54, 55 years. So we wondered if anyone had asked the Passamaquoddy people what their thoughts are regarding the development of this green space, or what the green space means to them. So I spoke with Mr. Hugh Ackergy, who is chief of the Passamaquoddy peoples in Canada. I was surprised to learn that Mr. Ackergy was not consulted about this proposed development. Upon speaking with Chief Ackergy, he stated that he was unaware of the proposed outdoor exercise park, and he is opposed to any development of this property. As we all now know, polling of the neighborhood to gauge the reception of this proposed development was not undertaken by Town Council. Therefore, we did a quick poll of the immediate neighborhood. Not all of the neighborhood property owners were home at the time of polling, but we discovered that most of the local property owners were unaware of the proposed outdoor exercise park at Indian Point. All of the people who signed the petition, which each of you have a copy of, are against development of this green space. And they also believe there are other locations in St. Andrews that would be much better suited for the outdoor exercise park. With all due respect, it is one thing to choose a location for a development when you're unaware of how the locals feel, what their concerns are, what their wishes are. We get that, we understand that, we respect that. But now, however, you are aware of how the majority of the property owners in the immediate vicinity feel. And we all respectfully request that you reconsider other locations for this exercise park. Another concern we have is noise and safety. We feel that the noise generated from an outdoor exercise park will have a negative impact on this green space, as well as the immediate residential area. We have seen similar parks in Canada and the United States of America, and we have found them to contain fairly noisy apparatuses, regardless of the level of maintenance they receive. Also, having lived at this location for 34 years, we know that quite often people who are partying in the evenings down on the beach or nearby, they usually roll by our property between 1 and 3 a.m. These individuals, we believe, do not intend to be loud or disruptive, but oftentimes at 3 in the morning, their voice levels escalate, and they are perhaps partaking in activities that they might not normally do so. We are very confident that these same partiers will use the outdoor exercise park as a playground, since it is on their route to their accommodations, and the noise generated will be heard throughout the neighborhood. This additional associated noise would not be appropriate for a residential location. The local property owners pay taxes and have certain rights and expectations that are associated with living in a residential neighborhood. Also, due to the high traffic of the late night partiers, one might be concerned for their safety in using outdoor exercise equipment while potentially being somewhat inebriated. Other locations. Typically in other areas of Canada and the United States, outdoor exercise parks are located near playgrounds, sports fields, etc., apart and away from residential areas. Luckily in St. Andrews, we have a number of alternative sites that could be considered. For example, the Harry Mallory Sports Field comes to mind, and that seems to be a very popular choice among the people we talk to. In conclusion, we are strongly opposed to and have several concerns about the proposed development of the green space at Indian Point. This green space is a highly treasured area used daily by tourists and residents alike for relaxation and enjoyment. Playing frisbee, flying kites, picnics, celebrations, school functions, sunbathing, daily lunches, and other unique events hosted by the town are just a few ways people enjoy this green space. St. Andrews is noted and known for its history, beauty, and charm. Let's preserve Indian Point for its simple qualities that keep it in its natural state. Let's not set a precedent for any type of future development at Indian Point. Once a green space is gone, it's gone forever. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Deering, for the presentation. At this point, I'll open it up for questions. Before I did, just for council's awareness, I will follow up with Aveska Tumogati, but I personally reached out to the office and actually got verbal permission for this project to go ahead. So I will double check to make sure that there was no miscommunication on their end on that. But that's something I'll personally follow up on, as it's something that's very important to me personally, and I'm sure other members of council as well. I do have a question before other members of council. In regards to wetlands, is there any concern from green space, or is it that's more, would this type of development fall under that? I don't know if you want to just take it back and follow up with us, but over to Mr. Spear and Mr. Knopper.
Your worship, I guess the term development isn't typically used in this type of thing. I mean, we're talking interlocking bricks that are sitting on gravel with 5 and 6 foot high exercise equipment. So in the event that, even if the water rolled over it, it could damage the equipment for sure, but it wouldn't necessarily damage the base or this area that's being developed to support it.
Well, that may be. Can I speak?
Just one sec. Is this something that you think that we should reach out to Department of Environment on for?
Well, what he's correct on is once this begins, we'd have to do a WAWA permit anyway, and we'll get their input on there. I can follow up with them again, but it's, there's development around that area.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Deering, sorry, go ahead.
Sure, no. I appreciate what you're saying. And you make it sound like, with all due respect, Chris, you make it sound like you're just gonna put some stones on a flat piece of ground. But when we look at that piece of ground, it needs some work, it needs some attention to get to that stage. And speaking of WAWA permits, that's fine if it's just a designated wetland, but there's a difference here. This is a provincially significant wetland. And as I understand it, and we've spoken with people within the environment, permits to develop a provincially significant wetland, they're like hen's teeth. They're hard to get, and they're there for a reason. It's designated that for a reason. Perfect.
So let's review on that and follow up on that just to make sure. Any other member of council had any questions? Councillor Heenan.
I
can hear you.
Sorry about that. Anyway, your worship, I have a few questions to start with. First off, this was brought up about a year ago, and proposals were put out, questionnaires were put out about where the spot should be. So one of my question is, how come it's coming to surface now? One, you say you're directly beside. I went down, you're not really directly beside. There's quite a large space. There's a trail, there's a parking lot. You mentioned that grass and trees is for recreation. So is this. This is for recreation. You mentioned the health benefits associated with green space. This senior exercise park to me is health benefits. You say there's less cardiac disease having green space. I say there's less cardiac disease having exercise equipment. Economic benefits, you think from a green space. I also think there's economic benefits from this sortie. And to be fair, I think it's quite inappropriate that we look at this as a not a good thing for seniors. So what you're saying is that this is really not a good thing for seniors. And as far as having the chief as our mayor has said, we have talked to the Passamaquoddy people and they have given their okay. So wherever your information is, there's a communication break somewhere. Those are my questions.
Yeah, well, let's start with the first one. Could you repeat the first question, please?
The first question, you said you were beside, directly beside.
I don't think that was the first one, but
The second one was, you said that grass and trees provide recreation.
okay, okay, let's one at a time, please.
Yep.
So our property is adjacent to the trail, which is adjacent to the property we're talking about, the green space.
Correct.
Yes. And when you say there's a parking lot that separates us from the proposed.
There's a trail.
Yeah.
Yes.
So no, I'm just saying we're adjacent property owners,
Okay.
as are, I think, 18 different people on the petition that you have a copy of.
Well, my question is, how come this was not brought forward a year ago?
Okay, so to answer that question, I've got to tell you that I wasn't aware of it, as were the other 18 people of the petition that signed that. And I'm not sure how you're getting your information out, and maybe it's mail, maybe it's Facebook, I'm not sure. But with all due respect, we learned about this proposed location for an outdoor exercise park about 3 weeks ago. And as soon as we heard of, well, that's a fact.
No, it's not, because you've been talking this for a month.
Well, 4 weeks. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. So we learned about it fairly recently. And as soon as we learned about it, we asked, what's the recourse? What do we do? How do we go forward? And we're still learning how the town council works and how to respond properly and appropriately. And we're learning, that there's a certain process, and we know the process now. And
After 36 years, sir?
well, I'm not here to, explain myself. So you had a question. So we've established that we're adjacent property owner, and the majority of people that signed our petition are majority property owners. And we're not the only people that were unaware of this. And you can call the people on the petition. The people that we talked to were unaware that this was a proposed location. And furthermore, and I'll jump ahead a little bit, we're not saying that an outdoor exercise park is a bad thing.
No.
We believe in exercise, fresh air, and all of that. We're just suggesting, for the multitude of reasons that we laid out here, that this is, in our opinion, the improper location. So again, perhaps an outdoor exercise park will benefit St. Andrews. I can't see how it wouldn't. We just believe that we believe a different location would be more appropriate. But you had other questions. Please go ahead.
No, I'm fine. I'm listening.
Okay. So again, we just learned about it recently, as did the majority of people that signed that petition.
You had some of your neighbors were at the announcement.
I'm sorry?
Some of your neighbors were at the announcement by the federal government, because I spoke with them and they were they liked the idea. So some of your neighbors were at the federal announcement.
Oh, well, that's wonderful. And I see some neighbors here right now. And they may be in favor of it. I'm just saying that the majority of the people are not in favor. And it's not that we're not in favor of an outdoor exercise park. Don't get me wrong. We think that that might be a beautiful thing. We just don't think it'd be a beautiful thing beside our property for the reasons that we just went through.
Well, some of your persons on your petition are in Shamcook. So they're really not your neighbor. They're not their neighbor to Indian Point.
Correct. And as I stated in my letter to you, I think you have a copy of the letter. I can read the letter over.
No, that's fine. I have it, sir.
Okay.
Yeah.
So in my letter, I think there were 18 names that were local property owners.
Right.
And I think there were 25 in total. And I also mentioned in my letter that some people heard about our petition and wanted to sign it. No, we're not. So we didn't stop them. We didn't say, hey, you can't sign this thing. Again, I'm just saying that perhaps we should be paying more attention to what's going on here in town. And I get that. That's fine. We'll be doing that from here on in. But with all due respect, the people that signed that petition that live close by, they were unaware of it.
Well, with all due respect, sir, it's been broadcast and it has been advertised, and there was an open session. It's not really the town's fault if people are not aware.
Yeah, we'll open it up to other members of council.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank
Councilor
you.
Blanchard.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for the presentation, Mr. Deering. There were a couple of things you brought up. And first off, maybe I'd go to town staff, just because the issue of communication is a big one, right? If people in the area did not know that that's an issue, but I know, being on council for the time that we've been here, we've had at least 2 presentations, I think, on this, and it did start before we even came. So it's been ongoing for quite some time. Maybe for Mr. Knopper, perhaps, could you maybe just, if you're able to, I don't know if you put up the top of your head, I know we did receive something with sort of the communication and sort of the number of times it was communicated out and how it was done, just as a frame of reference here, I guess. You're able to do that. And maybe while you're looking for that, there were two other issues that you did raise. One was with regards to communication with the Besquitomakati people. Again, we as council were under the impression that it had happened and they had sort of granted and sort of given the okay. So the fact that you spoke to Chief Akaji and it was a different response, that's a concern. So I would like us to sort of speak and sort of follow up with the Besquitomakati on that one. And the second thing, I would look the town staff maybe to dig a little deeper on the designated the wetland designated special designation that it had. That's a concern as well. So I think we do need to have a bit more information on that. I think we'd like to get some more information there. Those are my two concerns right now. And sorry if you wanted to respond.
I'd like to, absolutely. Thank you. Sure. Thank you, Councillor Blanchard. So regarding the wetland designation, and I don't think we should lose sight of that.
No.
It's not your typical wetland designation. And it's one thing to say, we're going to put a pad down and put some exercise gear on it. And that's going to be the end of it. But what happens next year when you want to put washrooms in or develop the property some more? Like, you know, it makes sense to me anyways, that you would choose an area where you could develop the property properly, where you could put your infrastructure in place without having to worry about trying to get a special exemption for a permit in an area that you normally couldn't get it.
Yeah.
Also, to your point where you were unaware of Chief Akaji's position, not only is he opposed to it, he was unaware of it. So, you know, I feel bad from what Councillor Heenan says. Like, I feel bad for not knowing more what's happening in St. Andrews. I'll take that. But at the same time, there are a lot of people on that petition that didn't know about it either, as did Mr. Akaji. So I think when you look at it, we should all look at communication. But I don't think looking back is the answer anyways. I think looking forward is more the answer. This park, this outdoor exercise park is not on the ground yet. It can certainly be moved. No harm, no foul. Just because it's slated to go into a certain spot doesn't mean it can't be revisited and moved somewhere else. You know, I'm thinking, sorry, just to go done. I'm thinking that perhaps we raised a few points that you were unaware of. And all we're asking is for you to go back and have a discussion about this and examine other locations. And perhaps in my mind, the biggest thing here is that the majority of the local property owners are opposed to it. They're not opposed to an outdoor exercise park. They're opposed to it at this location.
Perfect. Thank you, Mr. Deering. Any other member of council? Deputy Mayor Akaji.
Sorry, Mr. Deering. We did propose other sites.
Yep.
I do want you to know that came forward from council, and we were informed that these other sites were not acceptable. So that's why we didn't go with the other sites. We have gone with this one. So
right.
I just want you to know it was brought up in council, and I was the one that suggested Langmaid Park would be a good place to put it, but friends of Langmaid had said no, they didn't want it there either. So, again, we were told that it was the sites that we suggested were not appropriate.
So,
so you know.
No, I appreciate that. I appreciate that, Deputy Mayor Akaji. I really do. So to just go back to that, so it was proposed to put it at Langmaid Park, but the local residents didn't want it there. So therefore, it's not an acceptable location. It's proposed to go at the green space at Indian Point. The local residents don't want it there. They carry the same weight. If it's and furthermore, we believe there are other locations that would be appropriate. For example, you know, and I'm not here to. This wasn't why we came here. We came here to make our position clear. But I got to ask the question. You know, the Harry Mallory Sports Field, that'll be a development that'll only expand and grow. You're looking at the dog park there, which is a beautiful thing. You're going to have facilities there, infrastructure's there. You've got room there to develop. It's not in a resident, it's not next to a residential area. So I think there are other locations, and we're not talking about one person that's opposing this. We're talking about the families, the majority of families in the neighborhood are opposed to it. The location, not the idea of the exercise park.
We understand that
You got
point.
it?
Sorry.
Okay.
I just want to keep this moving. We have a big agenda and
Yes.
we keep saying the same thing over and over. No disrespect, but we keep going back here. So unless another member of council, the process here is a decision has been made. And if you can go back and look at the time, it was actually the previous council debated this. So it's, I would guess, almost 2 years old. But it doesn't mean it can't be revisited. But in order for this to be revisited, it would need a majority of council to want to revisit it, since the decision has been made within the last 6 months. So I don't know, for council's perspective, if you just want to hold off until we do a follow-up on the environmental. And as well, I'm going to be reaching out to my contact at the Beska-Tumagati office to find out what happened on their end. As we did have an approval. I personally got it myself, so I'm confident in that. So, Mr. Nopper?
Your worship, what we can do is we can bring it back as a discussion piece for the information, as well as I'll do a staff report that highlights all the processes that were taken from previous council and this council, so everybody is well aware of what has been transpired within the discussions.
Councillor Hurdle.
Thank you. Sorry, I know that we're trying to wrap this up, but I just have a couple of questions for Mr. Deering, and I'm sensitive to the comments that you've brought up so far, and I echo a lot of Councillor Blanchard's concerns as well. Just one question for you, because in my mind, as I was approaching this and thinking about it, it didn't come across to me that this was a development per se. And when I use sort of quotations around development, is there sort of a ground floor to what you consider to be a development? Because this wasn't in that ballpark for me. And when you use the word development, it's not how I think about it. So I just want to hear your point.
No, I understand that. Thank you for that, Councillor Hurdle. When we go back to the definition of a green space, a green space is defined as an area of grass, trees, or other vegetation set apart for recreational or aesthetic purposes in an otherwise urban environment. So it's very specific what a green space is. And if you put a playground or an outdoor exercise park or whatever in the middle of a green space, you've lost a green space. You might have a really nice playground, outdoor exercise park or whatever, but the green space is gone. That's if you look at the true definition of a green space. So our position is that the green space offers so many benefits to so many people, just the way it is. And we live next door. So there's not a day that goes by when we don't see a lot of people that are using the green space for what it truly is. It's good for the mind, good for the body. Again, not to be negative about anything else, but also if we want to backtrack just a little bit, when we talk about development of an area, again, we're not talking about putting some stones on a flat piece of ground and that's it. To develop that area properly, there's a lot of soil that needs to be put in, a lot of work that needs to be done, some infrastructure has to be put in place, and that's for an outdoor exercise park. So then the question would be, what's phase 2 for an outdoor exercise park? Is it washrooms? Is it, what else is, what's next down, coming down the road? And how is that going to fit into this green space and to this specific location that is surrounded by residential neighborhoods? So again, don't want to repeat myself. So does that answer your question?
To a point, yeah. I just have a follow-up for you as well. And again, this is just me trying to conceptualize where the issue lies, really. And if I think about the Elizabeth Street extension at the bottom of the water, where we have it's now accessible, people can enjoy it where before they couldn't. You wouldn't consider that to be a green space, even though that it is now more usable by the community.
When I look around St. Andrews, and we've been here all our lives, I see very few true green spaces. When I look at the Indian Point, I see a wide open green space. There's a few trees. There's a number of picnic tables. There's an opportunity there for the tourists, for the locals, for anybody to go have a picnic and just fly a kite, whatever. That space is there. The Elizabeth Street extension is a fairly small, compact area. St. Andrews is, some people describe St. Andrews as an outdoor exercise park as it is, because we have so many people that walk around St. Andrews and enjoy St. Andrews. What would I consider development? I think anything that you do with that green space is a development. If you can pick anything out of a hat. Why not, a lemonade stand, whatever. If you develop the property and alter it from its green space, then you're changing it. You're taking one of the few green spaces that we have in St. Andrews that is used by the general public, that is that size, where you have a view of the water and truly enjoyed by thousands of tourists every year, as well as locals every day. Then we're jeopardizing not only just losing it right now, but future development that will, it'll be gone in our children's day. And that's not what we really want, as you know, like, don't want to beat it to death, but that's.
No, thank you very much. I appreciate your point. Yeah.
Thank you. Appreciate your time.
Thank you. Any other member of council? If not, okay. So council, thank you very much for the presentation this evening. I appreciate it. At this time, I'll look for council, just to get some consensus for direction to staff. I did hear concern. I personally want to follow up on the conversation I had, but the other one was the environmental impact. Would it make more sense for you to have this just go to staff and then come back to you on these issues before we decide if we want to revisit it? Does that make more? Okay. I've got consensus. That's what we'll do the report. And I'll also tomorrow reach out to the Beskatu Mugati, just to have a conversation there. All right. Thank you again for the presentation. We're going to get in. We've already approved the minutes on the last meeting. There's nothing under communication, staff report. I don't, there's a financial report in there. Is there anything you wanted to highlight on that one?
Not at this point, Your Worship. As we get into the budget, we'll go. We've talked about some of the challenges we faced over the winter. But that said, there's been savings in other areas that means that we should head close to a break even for this year.
There is a recommended motion, but I don't think we need one in this case then. Is that safe to say? That's more for the full reports that we get from everybody, right? Okay, so we'll skip over that. And at this time, we're getting in the introduction, consideration, and passing of bylaws and motions. A rare evening where Deputy Mayor Akaji actually doesn't have one. That's very rare. But we do have one for Councillor Blanchard under Public Works.
Thank you, Your Worship. So PW 220811, it's a support for Regional Development Corporation and Federation of Canadian Municipalities grant application for energy facility study. So the town of St. Andrews has been progressive in adopting plans and processes to address climate change, greenhouse gas emissions, and energy reduction targets. The town has recently completed a greenhouse gas emissions and energy study and is in the process of completing a community-based energy study project with Quest Canada. From these plans, council has set the target by 2034. And it is the goal of the town to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and energy use by 30% from 2020 numbers. In addition, the end goal is to get emissions as close to net zero by 2050, which is the mark set by the federal government. One of the key next steps in the process, as indicated in the studies to date, is to have a full review study of all municipal facilities completed with specific guidance and costs on what needs to be improved to address the building envelopes, what renewable energy systems should be installed, and balancing the last reductions with carbon credits. Provided with this report is a copy of the consultant's outline of this project. The cost of the study is $48,500 plus HST and would be completed on a timeline of 6 to 8 weeks. The project would give an outline on how to meet the 30% target goal and how to achieve as close to net zero as possible. Staff is seeking funding from the province and the Federation of Canadian Municipalities to help cover the majority of the costs associated with this project. As part of the grant requirements, a resolution of the council is needed to support the grant funding application. The goal is to have a 20, 40, and 40% split between funding partners. It is anticipated the town's contribution would be $10,000, with the partners providing approximately $20,000 each. If approved for funding, we would anticipate the project to start in the early new year. So the motion that is before council, the council supports the application for funding to the Regional Development Corporation and the Federation of Canadian Municipalities for funding an energy facility study on municipal assets to achieve the greenhouse gas emissions and energy targets and to move towards net zero facilities. And I so move.
Could I have a seconder for that motion? I've got Councillor Heenan, and we'll open this one up for discussion. Okay, not seeing any, so I will call the question. All in favor of this motion, please signify by saying aye. That's everybody that has been carried. And that would, we've got more for Public Works. Page 50.
Yep, getting there. Should click, almost there. All right, we're gonna have to go this way. I seem to have trouble finding it here. Oh, I think I've got it here. No, that's a staff report.
Would you like?
Got it. I've got it. I've got it. It's not on page 50 on mine. It's somewhere else, but I think I found it here. So PW 220812. This is TSA 2022-04 St. Andrews Asphalt Resurfacing Tender Motion. So TSA 2022-04 asphalt tender was publicly opened on August the 4th, 2022, with the following proposals. Prices include HST. So Fundy Contractors Limited, $252,000, $252,963.20. Galbraith Construction, $293,652.50, and NRB Construction, $295,613.25. The engineer's estimate was $168,348.50. Please see the attached staff report for additional background information. Our budget for the fall was only $113,000. And due to the dramatic difference in the price, staff is recommending that this tender not be awarded. The motion before council is that council does not award tender TSA 2022-04 St. Andrews Asphalt Resurfacing 2022 due to being significantly over budget, and I so move.
Thank you. A seconder for that motion. Councillor Neal, give him one. Discussion on this motion. Councillor Hurdle.
Thank you, Your Worship. I guess this is a question to town staff. It's a bit of a gamble, isn't it? That we're just anticipating that prices are going to fall. There is some speculation involved in what that will actually look like. And there's indications that even this lull that we've seen over the past week was possibly a false lull driven by other economic factors. So I think we need to take into consideration that it could be twice as expensive at this time next year if we were to consider this. And I mean, maybe it should be up to us to bite the bullet and pay for it now that we know what it is and can. Not that I'm necessarily in favor or against it one way or the other. It's a considerable amount of money for us to take on. It's something that is necessary. So I guess I'll pass it over to you for your thoughts
Thank you, Councillor. Certainly you're right. And as mentioned, my staff report, we are taking a bit of a gamble. I will say that due to a fire, we're only down to one asphalt company working in St. John right now. And you can guess how that could go. But we did notice that the price of asphalt more than tripled since the spring tenders. I can't crystal ball it. I'll guarantee it. And I'm hoping I'm not wrong, but I think the conditions are favorable. That'll go down, especially if we, as I mentioned, that if we combine it with other projects that were scheduled for next year, that on a poor volume discount, that it should go down slightly or at least remain the same. At least we have a chance to plan for it now instead of taking it with unforeseen.
We'll put that in the minutes. No, it's a good question. You got to think with rising interest rates and stuff, construction will slow down, and some of these asphalt companies will maybe have a little bit more availability in their schedule. But
just one other point, Your Worship, just because we were so busy this year, our tender didn't come out to the summer, which we know traditionally is the worst time to put it out. And it'll be our priority next year to get it out earlier, like we've done these other ones. As you know, most of our other projects had savings, so we can work on it and get it issued sometime in March, April, like we typically do. Just in that timing, we'd usually typically see savings.
Anyone else on this one? Otherwise, Councillor Heenan.
Yes, Your Worship and Council. I totally agree that postponing it is the way to go. I just want to make sure that it doesn't fall through the crack next year. That we make sure that this is because it's necessary.
Yeah, it'll remain on our asset management file
Yes.
as the top priority.
Yes.
But
Thank you, Your Worship.
Good point. So we're not canceling. We're saying hopefully we have a better 2023. Councillor Hurdle.
Sorry, just to follow up to that one. If we do table it, do we possibly lose the list, run the risk of losing the ability to set this as part of our budget due to amalgamation in the fall?
I can happily answer that unless you want to, Mr. Spear. The expectation would be whether we're part of the budget process or not, staff would be bringing forward our multi-year plans. So I would have probably a pretty good feeling that with or without us would be probably included in for next year. And I haven't given up on the conversation on elected officials of the town of St. Andrews voting on their own budget versus people that are appointed that live outside of our community doing it. I have a big problem with the way that this process is, and I've been pretty vocal about it, and I'll continue to be vocal about it. But there is definitely a risk, but staff is supposed to be on the administration committee that does that, and I think it'd be at the top of their list as well for recommendations.
And
Thank you.
just to remind you, your worship too, or not to remind you, but early next year, council can realign the capital budget. The operational budgets are a little bit of a different thing because of the way it ties directly into the tax rate. But if certainly we're going to try to align with your expectations, but early in the winter, if you want to make amendments to what was proposed through the process, you certainly be free to do that.
Thank you, Mr. Spear. Any other questions? Otherwise, I'll call the question. All in favor of this motion, please signify by saying aye. That's everybody. So that has been deferred. At this point, we're going to switch to a discussion on the Wharf and Market Square project. It's on page 55, PW 220813. We have a staff report. Obviously, the previous council had a conversation about the Wharf and the approach, and as well Market Square. And no surprise, as we did the process that is required around it to prep it, our cost, I wouldn't say doubled, but they're went up 50% anyway. And now it's more or less the staff report is to have a preliminary conversation on, do we look at the alternative ways of replacing it, or do we just repair the project essentially? And what it comes down to is that we have a $5.5 million budget. The previous council selected the timber option. It's gone up to $7.57 million. So significant increase. And the town was going to go on to pay its share. But the problem is anything above the 5.5 million, the town pays 100% of. So if we were to go with the timber, the town would be paying the third of the original 5.5 and then paying an additional $2 million, which is quite significant for even an asset that's as important as the Wharf. So if we were just to repair the existing structure, and there's a list of all the things that would need to be done, the challenge is that you'd be looking at maybe a expected life of 25 years versus 50 years. And then of course it does say that we have the option of rejecting the grant altogether and reapplying. But when you have a commitment from other levels of government to go a third, right? Is that right, Mr. Spear? For $5.5 million and you're turning that money down, that's a pretty risky play. So over to staff. If there's anything more I should add to that report, or is that quick summary?
No, your summary was excellent, your worship. Just on the clarity on the funding, the original budget when we submitted it was actually 5 million, and the council approved that a much over they thought they could live with the 2 or 3 year inflationary factor, but it's skyrocketed since.
So council, this is a tough one. It's a lot of money. It's probably the most money that you'll probably spend on a project throughout your entire mandate, to be completely honest with you. I think it's important for this council to have this conversation before municipal reform happens, and as well, staff will be looking for direction no matter what the budget process looks like to know how to proceed. And this is not a new project, so I don't think the province will have any challenge with it. It's something that's been in the works for a while, so they're probably expecting it. But I wanted to get some of your input on what you think of these numbers and how you think we should best proceed, and anything that we feel that we should do around process as well for more input. The one thing that would be nice around this is the original approach would have been higher than the rest of the Wharf. This would, for the next 25 years, continue to have it one beautiful symmetrical level. When you look at it, it would be more visually appealing. But in the same sense, let's be honest, we're putting it 25 years down the road. And I can't even speculate how much this project's going to cost the taxpayer of St. Andrews in 25 years. But with municipal reform, it might be a bigger thing. Who knows? There might be more funds. If you look at rising sea levels, there's going to be more and more funds you would assume that are relevant around it, more opportunity. But yeah, it's a big one. So over to you, council.
I'll jump into Worship.
Absolutely.
I mean, for me, it's just, I think in staff's report there, the second page of that, where we do talk about some of the questions that need to be answered and like timing and all those sorts of things. Those are some of the big questions. And I think, especially for a lot of people in town, I think they'd like to hear, especially those who are going to be impacted by the work on the wharf, would like to get a better sense and a clear sense of how long this is going to take and when things are going to begin. In terms of the budget and maybe where the direction, what direction staff is looking for. Unfortunately, as much as I'd like to, to push it out and to get as much bang for our buck, I guess, like with some of the other options available, which would have a much longer lifespan. I just don't see how we can go much further beyond what we've already budgeted for the 5.5, because there is a significant jump as soon as you go to the timber or the concrete replacement or any of those other options. We're up, almost 2.5, 3 million more. And I just don't see how we as a community can foot the bill on our own for that type of that type of expense. So I am in favor of the repairs. Again, I think what I'll look for, and I think a lot of people in town will look for, are the answers to some of the questions in terms of how quickly this is going to happen and all those types of things. So that's really my only comment. Thank you.
Yeah, for short-term look at it, Mr. Spear, on a follow-up to that question is it safe to assume that the repair would be less disruptive to the businesses than a full rebuild? I've got to think it would be.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure, Your Worship. I have to get the engineers, but there's a small section of the wharf, but it's only, wrote it there, but I think it was 60 feet that would be removed as opposed to like 180 feet. So I'm assuming they could do that in a relatively short amount of time. And that was really to rebuild from like King Street to the new timber wharf, because we are raising Market Square 0.5 meter, still under the scope of the original grant, that we had to do something towards climate change adaptation. And so they seem to be okay with that, understanding the cost, and that most of their applicants are all under the same gun. So that would be raised. There'd be some type of transition piece that has to be built. And then I'm assuming that the wharf would stay pretty much open with some inconvenience of construction vehicles being around. But we've done similar work in the last few years, and it tended to stay open except for a short amount of time. But certainly our consultant engineer on the head of this was out last week. That's why I can only ask the questions. We'll get together with them over the next week or so and to try to put some more answers to all this, so we know exactly what we're looking at.
Perfect. And I know that this is a very hard estimate, but the end of the wharf, like the other sections, what's the useful life of the other sections, would you say? Is it 25 years, meaning in 25 years time, we could look at completely replacing or building a wharf beside the existing one that they've done done that in the past in this community many years ago? Removing
climate change adaptation out of the equation, assuming, everything else is equal. One thing that's part of this is they're going to pile wrap the steel pilings that are at the new section of the wharf, and that'll extend the life considerably because they are deteriorating above the water line. We do have sacrificial anodes before the water line, but they don't help anything that's permanently in the air. Can I guess? No, but I would say the original wharf was built in 1950 and it's pretty much held together for whatever it is, 75 years. I would assume we probably are good for another 50 years. There'll still be ongoing maintenance and stuff that'll have to be done. But I can't see within 25 years that we're going to have to demolish the new pier head and the approach to it and start from new.
Yeah, just thinking, again, I won't be in this chair in 25 years, but you see other communities that transition their wharf into a walking wharf and build another one that the life cycle matches up a little better. So that's just where my head's thought. And again, that'll be a conversation for another day, not on my time. Councillor Hurdle.
Yeah, forgive me that this is purely my ignorance talking. I haven't participated in multi-million-dollar wharf rebuilds before in my career, but when we've approached CBCL to do obviously the consultancy work and the engineering, who would actually be doing the rebuild? Would we have to send it to tender at that point as well?
Yeah, definitely have to be to tender. The two companies have done some of that work, have been Fundy Contracting Limited locally, and then John Flood and Sons did some work similar to that in the last 6 or 7 years. But something of that significance, or probably some other parties, even from outside the province, will line up to have a look at it anyway.
So that said, I mean, we could send this to tender and then get a much more inflated number back. So this doesn't even really indicate the truth of what we could end up paying for this.
No, it's just like the asphalt tender.
Right.
If it goes high, then council have to make decisions. There's only two things I can say about that is as talk, there's different components. And for instance, the wrapping was about $1 million. Council, if it comes up too high, council may look at it and say, we just can't do it or sacrifice that. There's other options, but if I could tell you, we could write a check today and get it built. No, it's just, we're just guiding along the process at a Class E budget. From an engineering perspective, that's them trying to crystal ball it like we were with the asphalt a little bit earlier. And once the time everything's designed and put in, I will say there's a significant contingency built into it in case of overages. So that sometimes helps out, but until we get that final document in front of us, we won't know.
Yeah. Thank you. Good question. Councillor Neal.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. Just a question for staff again, and I may have missed this in the report, but could you touch on what the additional infill is as opposed to the original plan?
So the plan right now is what was designed was to extend Market Wharf out by another 40 meters.
Yep.
But that's also going to include, there's like about 20 meters of armor stone. So that's not all usable space. Because it's, as you can envision, we're going to be doing like near the Seasons Bistro, where it'll be in that pyramid style. So it's to go out. It's just about equal to where the on the other side of the wharf by the Day Adventure Center or the rental buildings there, that would be about where the flow out is to be equal going across is the original plan.
Okay, thank you. The only other question quickly would be about the replacing of the crib boxes. Again, those are replacing the existing boxes that are there, correct? So again, it will still be open for water flow through it.
Yeah, it's the same design. It's basically
Right.
just using the design from the 50s and rebuilding it.
Okay. My only other comment would be, I mean, personally, I would like to see the environmental impact assessment done prior to us, fully committing these funds. It would be nice to have that in hand before we make the decision, if that's a possibility.
It is. Would you like that for a repair too, or just for a rebuild?
For either. Again, I think the proposed design there, again, it would be nice to have the EIA on that
Your Worship, if I
if we
may.
are adding this additional infill. So
Yeah, I guess when we'd gone to the province, they didn't require anything more within the basics, which was very minimal. They weren't worried because they considered it mostly putting it in an imprint. If council wants to do something over and above, certainly that's within your right and may be recommended. But it's just, we don't have to do a full blown EIA, which could cost hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Yep.
But
Okay.
if that's the direction council wants to give, that's up to you.
But there was some work. There was a study done through the Saskatoon-Mugatti for
Barn sparrows.
yes.
Was all they're concerned about was nesting patterns of barn sparrows was all the province. We went to them and asked, they have a group within environment that's specific to or EIA, sorry, of all types. And all they were concerned about at the time is the barn sparrow population, which came back. There was none underneath the wharf or along the banks.
okay, thank you.
So council, I know this is our first more detailed conversation with the numbers, but is this something that you feel like tonight you want to make a decision and I try to get consensus pretty quick? This is a lot of amount of money, or would you prefer that we put a presentation ahead to the public and then vote on it after? So that way we have some more awareness and engagement on a decision that has long-term implications for the town of St. Andrews. Over to you. It's a big decision. Councillor Neal.
Yeah, Your Worship. Personally, I'd like to see it go back out to the public. Again, it's been a little while since I think we've discussed it, or the previous council discussed it. And with the minor changes to the plan, I think it would be worthwhile to put it back out to them.
Perfect. Is that okay with you, Mr. Spear? Does that work for timing? Does that work for everyone council? I think it would be good just for the public to be more aware of the numbers that we're talking about and put it in a document where they can clearly see. And we could even probably put that on the town website as well. So people that want to click and see the decision that's before us. And again, normally we make decisions on the fly, but this is a significant amount of money. Does everyone feel the same way? Okay, so we're going to move off that one. Does that work for you, Mr. Spear? Okay, thank you. At this point, we're going to go to Councillor Neal for public safety.
Thank you, Your Worship. This is reference number PS 220809. The subject is the nuisance deer hunt for 2022. As part of the process for the nuisance deer hunt, the town of St. Andrews must formally request permission to host the hunt from the Minister of Natural Resources and Energy Development. The goal of the program, in partnership with DNRED, is to lower the number of deer in a safe manner. Hunting can only occur with the use of bow and must be on a property with 1 acre or greater of space. The number of available permits will be determined by DNRED. Some of the facts on the deer hunt: it allows private landowners within the town to receive special permits authorizing hunters to harvest that's going to be a tough one, antlerless deer on their property. Hunters and landowners can register with the town between September 1st and October 31st. The hunt takes place between October and November. In 2021, the following statistics were gathered: 41 deer from the nuisance program, 3 deer to the food bank pilot project, 19 properties in St. Andrews had participated. So the town and DNRED are working on the food bank project again for 2022 and will provide an update on the process in the near future. So the motion before us reads that council moves to request permission from the Provincial Minister of Natural Resources and Energy Development for approval of a 2022 nuisance deer hunt within the town of St. Andrews limits. And I so move, Your Honor.
Thank you. A seconder. Councillor Heenan. This is an annual requirement that we have to do every year if you want it to take place. In addition to this, I'm confident that a number of antlered deer were harvested in the town of St. Andrews as well that were not part of this report. Yeah, over to you, Council. We'll open up for debate. Anyone have any comments? Councillor Blanchard.
Just a question, maybe for staff. I know the work was done. I think it was by UNV or someone that did the initial study for us to count to get an estimate of the number of deer in town. With the harvesting and the numbers that we're seeing here, how did they give us a sense of how many would have to be harvested to actually have an impact on that deer population and actually bring it down? Do we have a sense of, are we even close, or are numbers just going to continue to grow because there seem to be more and more in town? I don't think we're having much of an impact at this point with the harvest as it is. So I'm just curious.
So the report, Mr. Spear, I don't know if you recall, but the report actually didn't call for a nuisance deer hunt. It actually called for a call. They actually wanted it to be a situation. I'm not saying they wanted it, but in order to be successful, they needed, I believe it was 95% of the deer in the town of St. Andrews harvested. And then it would take an annual nuisance hunt from that point on to keep it manageable was their recommendation. Whether the province wanted it or not, I don't think the council of the day really thought the call was the way to go. It's not the deer fault that they're in St. Andrews, but there's hunting outside of town, so they allow it with the bow inside of town. And to your point, it's not winning the battle. I would say we're continuing to fall behind. The deer population today is, we've been getting 40, and then with antler, I'd say safely 50 deer a year in the town of St. Andrews harvested through the hunt. And that, to be honest, you don't even feel. You don't. And they're migrating in. The average deer moves about 70 kilometers a year when they put the trackers on it. They put, in my personal opinion, when they put the fence up at the highway, they trap them on a peninsula. So they're all migrating towards this area. They come in. There's no predators, no natural predators outside the nuisance hunt, and there's an abundance of food. And I don't see a solution that's going to end this that we are allowed within provincial law right now. I am looking forward to talking to Minister Holland. Before the last provincial election, we had a meeting with him. He did have some suggestions on relocating deer, and I know the mortality rate is extremely high on relocating deer. I've heard it's as high as 90%, and there's a big cost with it. It's about $1,000 per deer, but I'm pretty confident that a number of people, whether they feel sorry for the deer or whether they support getting rid of them in other means, would probably come to the table to help make this happen. Because, my response to that is let's do a small number, put a tracker on them and see how they actually survive. And the other thing is the Acadian Research Forest. Myself and former Mayor Naish went and visited, and there was an expression that they'd be interested in taking our deer and studying it. So that's the avenue I'd like to push. I do like the nuisance deer program, but the food bank program, because there's a lot of people in Charlotte County that could use some venison, but the reality is the program, the way that it was set up, was very flawed, and it wasn't the ideal. So unless we can make a significant change in that will not help the deer situation in the town of St. Andrews. So more to come. I did reach out to Minister Holland and ask for a meeting. I was saying I was going to Fredericton, and his office did schedule something shortly with me. So more to come, but the nuisance deer hunt has been something I believe was done 2 councils ago. So it's been probably in place for, I'm guessing, pretty close to 10 years now, or fairly handy to it. It's been 8 for sure.
2017.
2017. Okay, there we go. So with that being said, is there any other questions? Councillor Hurdle.
Yeah, just one final thing, or not final thing, and the rest of the council, of course. Just I heard something troubling last year or during this time, and I just want to make sure that that people are following the appropriate disposal processes and treatment of the animal as well. I just heard last year that something was left in a ditch somewhere, and when it came to my attention, and just want to make sure that if someone is hunting in the area, that they are responsible for appropriate disposal of the animal afterwards as well.
That's a very valid point that hunters, obviously you want hunters that are going to make responsible decisions. And I do know, unfortunately, a side effect of hunting is sometimes animals can get wounded and they do travel quite a distance. So it's very possible that that's one that happened with. So yeah, again, it's not the deer's fault, but in the same sense, if we have a tough winter, I don't know if you've hiked to the woods, but there's a lot of deer that actually starve in our community in the winter, but we've had a couple mild winters, and that's probably a little reason to why the population is thriving right now. Any other member council? Councilor Neal.
Yes, your worship. My only question was going to be again around the food bank project. And basically if there had been any update, I know you just touched on it a little bit. If there had been any update, as like, I know we had problems with it last year. Do we have any indication at all that we might have a little bit more success? The numbers there, again, 41 deer harvested and only 3 going to the food bank. Seems kind of shameful to me.
It is. So it was a small group that actually did the nuisance, the actual hunt. There was delays because of the temperatures when they originally put the tags out. It was very warm last fall. But the reality is, to explain the process to council, is if you harvest a deer, you have to field dress it. Then you have to go to St. George to DNR where they tag it. You then take it back because you probably live in this area. You have to skin the animal, and then you have to go back to St. George a second time. And the first hunter that did it was told the freezer was full. So they had to go home and do a third time. So you can see when you've got 10 hunters that all talk, it was deemed that it wasn't really worth the effort. So there's either, a couple solutions is that they approve a different type of butcher. They only want it a certain class. There's only 2 of in Charlotte County, and that's not their primary business. So they really don't do it, but there is people that have as a primary business, but they don't have the certification level. So either the province lowers the certification level, or we help someone that it's their primary business get the certification level up. That's the only way I could see that working. I do know that there was a lot of hunters that weren't selected for the small pilot project, which makes sense in year 1, they actually harvested one of those other deer and they tried to donate it. They just weren't part of the program. So maybe expanding it, there's other options there, but right now it's about the processing of meat, because the last thing we want is someone to harvest an animal and it go to waste, right? Which is the biggest fear. No problem. All right. If there's no one else, I'll call the question. All in favor of approving this motion, please signify by saying aye. And that has been carried. All right. The next one would be actually under Recreation and Community Services. I will go to Councillor Hurdle because we didn't have one for him this evening.
Oh, thank you very much. This is in reference to RCS 220810. And the subject is TSA 2022 11 Van Horne Trail Extension Tender Motion. And the background is TSA 2022-11 St. Andrews Trail Project Tender was publicly opened on August 4th, 2022, with the following proposals, including HST. Coastal Enterprise Limited at $617,340.13. Fairville Construction Limited at $671,370. Fundy Contractors at $711,896.40. NRB Construction Company at $775,629. And the engineer's estimate came in at $569,353.50. Please see the attached documents to this report for background information on the review of the tenders received. After a review of the submissions by CBCL Limited, we recommend that the lowest bid be awarded. And the motion before us is that council awards TSA 2022-11 Van Horn Trail Extension tender to Coastal Enterprise Limited in the amount of $617,340.13, including HST, and I so move.
Thank you, Councilor Michelle.
You're welcome.
Seconder for that motion?
How's things in Turkey? Want a second?
Yep, Councilor Heenan. Open this one up for discussion. Councilor Blanchard.
Just on that, I mean, and I only mentioned this because previously we had the tender on asphalt, noting that the cost of asphalt had gone up significantly, and it was about the lowest bid was about 100 and I think it was 111,000. Was that what it was over what we anticipated the budget was? We're now at another situation where again the engineer's estimate was about 569,000. Was that we're sort of basing our budget off of, I guess? So the lowest tender now is we're still over and above only about 50,000 this time, I guess. But we're I don't know, I'm just curious to know.
So this is a little different, Councillor, in the previous budget meeting. During the budget process at this time last year, we just set aside, including government funding, $1.5 million without estimating where how much the cost of each component would be. And so if we had done that exercise, it would be higher. There's no doubt about it. The engineer's estimate would have been done this summer. So they had, basically had knowledge of what the price was right now. So that's where it is. But as you saw, it even still rose above. So it's a different pool of money, because as opposed to the asphalt being borne by the taxpayers, this was 2/3 paid for through funding. So could we get more done next year? Maybe, but this is one of those cases where I would continue on with this particular project.
And I sort of want, that's the point I sort of wanted to raise as well. So I thank you, Mr. Spear, where this is sort of budgeted money, or it's a budgeted money. This is a lot of this money for trails. The trail project came through other sources of funding. So this is money available to us. We are allocating it essentially, not necessarily going through a budget process as we did previously. So this is money that we, is to be spent on trails. It's just a question of how and when we sort of do these things. So I appreciate you for raising that point. And like I said, it is a little bit different in terms of where the money is coming from. So thank you.
Councilor Heenan.
Yes, your worship and council. I think this is a gamble we have to take this time, simply because I realize it's $48,000 over what the engineer's estimate is. However, we need to get this underway. It's part of our mandate, and this has to be done. And I feel maybe if we wait till next year, it could be more. That's just my opinion, your worship.
Thank you, Councilor Heenan. Any other member of council? Councilor Hurdle.
Thank you, your worship. Just a quick question. If I recall correctly, and this could be my mistake, part of the path is proposed to go on Algonquin, the Algonquin Hotel property. Is that correct? Do we have an agreement in writing with the hotel, and to how long that, obviously a partnership with the town and the Algonquin, how long it would last for?
As of right now, we don't. We have been in discussions with them, and they've kind of given us a verbal okay, realizing we need to do a written okay, written agreement, but they have yet, because of the summer season, been able to commit to that, but we are still working with them. I will say, if for whatever reason that can't be completed until we get that, we could do everything but that part and treat that in this next phase next year to complete that portion if need be.
My suggestion would be that we don't touch it until we have that agreement in place.
Yeah. Absolutely,
Yeah,
100%.
Thanks. Good. Anyone else? Okay, all in favor of this motion, please signify by saying aye. That is everybody unanimous for the final motion tonight. And I think for a regular meeting, this is the first time that I have not seen a motion under finance and administration and planning and economic development in the same meeting. And that's 6 years. There's nothing under new business, so we'll go to question period. First, we'll check if there was anything that came in online throughout the course of the meeting, Mr. Knopper. While you're looking that up, I'll ask the question to the floor then. Is there any questions on anything that was on the agenda this evening? Mr. Deering.
And again, I know very little about how you're financing the project. And I just want to make a point, and that is, and might be just a rumor, but I've heard that the Wharf at the biological station has been condemned. And if that's the case, and the government boats need to use the town wharf, I'm just wondering if you're eligible for other funds that might not otherwise be available. Just something, again, don't know enough about it to really speak to it, but it's such a lot of money to, if you had other resources to help pay for it, it might make it easier for the town.
Yeah, so the federal government themselves is contributing a third, and we followed up to see if we went back to them if the amount goes up. And we were told that this was the maximum that they were willing to fund the project. Is that correct?
That's correct, Your Worship. Mr. Deering bringing up a good point that, you know, the biological station and the Huntsman are relying on our wharf for their assets. And when I hear it's a 5-year turnaround before they're going to be able to rebuild, we can go back there. But as I'm learning, every department within each level of government's kind of on their own. So it's really a hard system to navigate through sometimes. So I will approach their engineering, which we've been in contact with, to see if they might have any more. I will say they are paying fees for using our wharf, which does help towards it, but it's certainly worthwhile to say, you know, we need assistance to make this longer until you get your facility repaired or upgraded in a few years now.
In a perfect world, a few decades ago, everyone would have done asset management and realized the useful life of all the wharfs was expiring at the same time. So we could have phased it, but here we are.
Here we are. Oh, thank you.
No problem. Any other member of the public? Mr. Lister?
Mr. Mayor, Deputy Mayor, members of council, town staff. I just wanted to say you should be commended on the love of this community and all the work that you guys are doing. Probably not enough ever gets said about all the things that you do. And whatever you're getting paid, it ain't nearly enough. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you. You should come to every question period. Anyone else? Someone's got to buy Verna coffee after this. Okay, anything online?
Your Worship, I haven't received anything through email, but we do have 2 people online if you want to toss it out.
Okay, if anyone on watching through Zoom would like to raise their hand, ask a question, now would be the time. Give it another moment. All good, Mr. Knopper? Okay, question period has been wrapped up. I'll go to Councillor and Deputy Mayor's comments. Seeing none, I guess it was a long enough meeting, but unfortunately, it's not over because at 8:41 p.m., I'm looking for a mover that council goes into closed session as per Local Governance Act, Section 68J, which is a labor and employment matter for the town of St. Andrews. And I'll be looking for a mover. Got Councillor Blanchard and then Councillor Hurdle. All in favor of going to closed session, please signify by saying aye. That is everybody. We'll give a moment to go to closed session and shut down all the technology. Thank you. Thanks for attending. You're welcome. Could I have a motion to come out of closed session? I've got Hurdle and Heenan. Could I have a motion to, sorry, all in favor of coming out of closed session? We're at a closed session. Motion to adjourn, Deputy Mayor Akergy, seconded by Councillor Neal. All in favor of adjourning? You sure? That's it. Thank you very much.